So some of you may be thinking, great, Lauren, you've entered the religious life. What's that? And so this video is kind of a brief overview of what religious life is and what is this that I'm actually entering into. And so religious life is very different and encompasses both men's religious orders and women's religious orders, but it shares some things in common. One of which is that they make at least 3 vows, one of chastity, obedience, and poverty. And sometimes these can get confused a little bit. So the vow of chastity really means that we desire and we choose to live a celibate life, so we don't get married and we don't have children, but we still live within community. A second aspect with the vow of obedience, sometimes this can be referred to as we don't have a say in anything and we don't have to make any decisions and everything's just decided for us. And really, it's not really true in that regard. Rather, we share and we bring forward our gifts and the ways in which we feel that God is calling us, but ultimately it depends on the needs of the congregation where they end up sending us or missioning us. And then third, the vow of poverty. It's not that we're going to be living homeless in the streets of San Francisco. Rather, this vow of poverty says that we share everything in our community, and there's nothing that we particularly own. And with this also comes kind of the simplicity of living in that way. And so with these 3 vows, kind of lends itself to also this idea of living in community, as I briefly mentioned. And this community life is really important. It can be anywhere from 2 individuals to 30, 40, 50 living within the same community of those that are within the same congregation or order. And so that's a really important part of what religious life is as well. And with that, there's kind of 2 different types. There's apostolic communities or congregations, and these are those that really go outside of where they're living, and they work and do ministry outside in different healthcare or education or something along those lines. And then there's those that live in a cloistered community where they're never seen outside of their community. And so other individuals never really see them, nor do they really step outside of their community or where they live. And then within that, there's also this idea of a charism. And the charism is like the mission behind the congregation. While different members of religious orders will, be born and continue to pass on to hopefully heaven, really the charism is what remains firm and foundational to the congregation that really continues to live on. And so each congregation has a different charism. Some are based on education, some are based on healthcare, others are based on a particular location or the diocese in which they're called to serve. And so with the Handmaids of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, their charism, which I'll explain a little bit more in another video, is really on Eucharistic reparation, or really entering into the brokenness of the world and allowing healing in individuals' hearts through allowing others into the Eucharist and public adoration, or having the presence of God really in front of you. Another strong component is Ignatian spirituality, which is basically finding God in all things, and in this process of discernment, being the Magus. And so these are kind of particular focuses within the congregation of the Handmaids, along with it being an international and intercultural congregation that expands throughout 27 different countries. And within this, with each charism, they have different formation processes, but they also have different, one of the similarities is that they all have opportunities for prayer. And one of the commonalities among all different religious is called the universal prayer, or the divine office. And so all religious pray this at different times of the day, either individually or communally with the community or that they're living with. And so this gives really just a brief introduction into what religious life is, what it entails, And then also, what does this mean for me who's entering into this life? So I hope that that helps a little bit with some of the basic guidelines of religious life.